Welcome. Let's start with a short summary of your book for our audience.
Well, True Crime in Real Time is a unique hybrid true crime book where the reader is the fictional detective walking through the crime scenes, collecting evidence, and interviewing suspects in real true crime cases. The facts are real. True crime cases like Lizzie Borden, O.J., and Scott Peterson. The reader is the investigative detective.
That's quite an extraordinary idea. What is your approach to writing nonfiction and true crime?
TCRT is a crossover between nonfiction and fiction, true crime facts with a fictional reader detective. So I had my work cut out for me from the beginning, a little in the realm of narrative fiction. I first had to find a suitable true crime. They had to have enough evidence, recreatable crime scenes, and trials where all the aspects of the case were revealed.
Having the reader as the fictional detective in these cases gives kind of a new spin to working true crime cases. Was it difficult then to walk that line between real and fiction?
Yes, it was quite challenging. Each story features a different fictional detective and a partner. So I created actions and dialogue for their investigations. But all the locations of the evidence and the interviews are accurate based on my research. For example, our detective may be questioning a suspect, but the suspect's responses are consistent with their answers in the real case. Our detective will walk through the crime and uncover the evidence that was actually recovered in the real true crime cases.
Now, you don't come right out and tell us what the real crimes are. I perceive that was by design.
I didn't want to divulge the real crimes right away, to add some fun for the reader to think through the evidence and puzzle out the real crime. True crime aficionados will get them right away, but some friends and family took a little longer to figure out the cases. I also threw in a couple kind of obscure cases so that the true crime people will maybe do their own research.
I assume you had to be accurate with the details of the crimes. We know how perceptive true crime fans can be.
I had to be very meticulous with the research. True crime fans are obsessed with details, so it was very crucial that I was very purposeful in including every bit of evidence I found in my research into the story. Nonfiction requires strict organization and research.
What writing techniques did you use to hash out the details of these crimes?
I had to use a different point of view, POV second person, the narrative voice that uses the you to address the reader, making them part of the story. That was very challenging. And for some writers, that's not usually how they write, especially in true crime. Other techniques besides creating the fictional detective partner to bounce ideas off was to have the reader detectives, though they were different in each case, have a progression of investigative competence throughout the book. So by the end of TCRT, the reader detective is an accomplished investigator. I also added visual technique of crime scene sketches for authenticity.
Speaking of sketches, these were all very different.
Right. I did not want them to all look the same because they're done by different reader investigators in each story. So for each case, I had various people do the sketches for me. I did some, I had my relative draw some, even my neighbors do some. Of course, they're based upon the real crime scenes and real crime scene sketches. So that way they were all different. My neighbors and family can brag that they were part of writing this book.
Can you share some of the challenges you experienced while writing this kind of book?
Let's see, the main problem I had was to compress time. As we know, an investigation can take months or years, so I had to compress time to include all the evidence collection, all the interviews, etc. So the detectives may uncover all the evidence and interview all the people within a short period of time to keep the story moving. I had to stay on point with the POV and ensure all the evidence in each case was uncovered. Time compression, that was the main problem. Any evidence missed can change the case dramatically.
I notice you don't do any kind of trials in this book.
No, well, with one exception. I did not include the trials. Trials are messy. The defense gets involved and unwanted tangents to the case are injected. I did, however, add all the evidence introduced in the trials. So this goes back to the problem of getting all the evidence in without detailing the trial. I wanted the reader to uncover the evidence, assess all the nuances of the case, and then make a conclusion before defense attorneys make a mess of things by creating bizarre alternate scenarios.
There is one case where you delve into the trial and you get a little creative. Why was this done?
Yes, I wanted to do the Limburg case, but that case was actually all about the trial. Hauptmann actually testified in his own trial. There was a lot of very interesting testimony, pseudo experts in the trial and conflicting eyewitness testimony. So I had to be creative and insert a literary device. I decided to make the reader detective a person who is doing ancestry research and discovers that their uncle was the detective who worked the Lindbergh case. They discover all his notes on the case and can delve into it that way, learning all about the evidence, the testimony, and making assessments and conclusions about what really happened in the Lindbergh case.
You propose several challenges for the reader. What are those challenges?
Well, as I mentioned, I don't tell the reader which true crime case it is. I changed all the names of the people involved, but I'm sure the true crime aficionados will quickly know which case it is. I also challenge the reader to consider any alternative conclusions that the reader detective or the detective partner may discover. Maybe they haven't thought of that yet. Then I added those new cases, perhaps they haven't seen or read about yet. I also challenged the reader to identify the ignition points that shift the case's trajectory to point to the guilty person.
Ignition points? Can you explain a little more about ignition points?
Okay, as the detective is working a case, they uncover several bits of evidence. In most cases, there's one or two pieces of evidence that really change the case from a whodunit to a they did it, they're surely guilty. I came up with the term ignition point, but my reader detectives out there may have a better term. It's just what came to me while researching these cases. Ignition points are the pivotal pieces of evidence that propel the case. Some examples of ignition points might be the discoveries of the bodies of Scott Peterson's wife and his unborn child within miles of where he went fishing on the day they went missing, a fishing spot that was some 80 miles from his home. Or the blood from the victims on OJ's socks below his bed in his bedroom. Or that kidnapping ransom note that was placed on the back stairs, not the front stairs near those that come up from the basement and the front door of the house. Also, the DNA of the accused person inside the victim's car. These are ignition points that point directly to one person and one person only.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for granting me this interview, and good luck on your true crime in real time. It sounds absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, well, it's been fun. Thanks for the interview. This was great.